"Mom, you don't live here anymore. Pack your things and go." Jason spoke those words standing in the doorway of the living room, with a coldness that froze the air, right in front of his housekeeper and the driver who was waiting awkwardly in the hallway. The housekeeper lowered her gaze to the hardwood floor, ashamed for him. The driver pretended to scroll through his phone, acting like he didn't hear a thing, trying to make himself invisible. The afternoon sun poured in through the massive bay window and hit my face directly, blinding me for a second. Jason crossed his arms over his chest and stood there planted, motionless, waiting for me to leave his house. Tiffany, his wife, was lounging on the designer sectional sofa, scrolling on her smartphone, without even deigning to lift her head to look at me. I took a deep breath, gripped the strap of my purse tightly, and promised myself I wouldn't cry in front of anyone. I just shifted my gaze to the silver frame sitting on the console table, a picture of him and me when he was 8 years old, on his elementary school graduation day. You know that feeling when you feel the floor disappear beneath your feet, but somehow you remain standing anyway? I worked for 23 years scrubbing other people's houses so he would never go hungry. I sold the only plot of land my husband left me so he could open his first store. And 3 days after that scene in the living room, he saw me sitting in the leather chair next to the bank manager, with a folder full of documents in my hand. And when he saw me there, he froze. Stay with me, because this story is just getting started. Jason was born when I was 26. His father, Frank, was a long-haul trucker. He died in a highway accident when Jason was barely 9 years old. From one moment to the next, I was left completely alone with a child to raise and not a dime in savings. I started working as a housekeeper. I cleaned 3 different houses a day just to cover the bills. I would wake up at 5 in the morning, drop Jason off at the neighbors, take 2 buses to get to the wealthy suburbs, and wouldn't come back until it was pitch dark. He was a quiet boy, very studious. He never gave me any trouble. He did his homework alone, heated up the dinner I left ready on the stove. Sometimes, when I got home exhausted, he was already asleep with his notebook open on his lap. I would look at him and think, this boy is going to have a different life than mine. When he finished high school, he got into a technical program for business administration. He spent 2 years studying and working at a supermarket to help with household expenses. I never let him drop out of school. At 23, he came to me and said he wanted to open a home improvement and hardware supply store. He told me he had found an excellent location, that he already knew the suppliers, that he was sure it would work. The only problem was he didn't have the money for the down payment. I had a piece of land. It was the only thing left to us by his father. It was in a developing area, a bit far out, but it was worth something. I had always dreamed of building a small cottage there one day for when I could no longer work. But I sold the land and gave him all the money. We didn't sign a contract. I didn't ask for a receipt. He was my son. The store opened its doors. In the beginning, it was tough, but Jason was dedicated. He worked from Sunday to Sunday without a break. I kept cleaning houses and helped him however I could. I brought him home-cooked meals in Tupperware, ironed his shirts, handled the paperwork when he asked me to. 3 years later, he opened the 2nd location, then the 3rd. By the time he reached the 5th store, he already had a brand new truck, employees on payroll, and a private CPA. He called me every Sunday, took me out to lunch at nice restaurants, told me that he had achieved all of that because of me. I felt so proud. At 31, he met Tiffany. She worked at a high-end boutique at the mall. She was beautiful, articulate, always dressed to kill. In the beginning, she was very nice to me. She called me Ms. Grace, asked if I needed anything, complimented my cooking. They got married at the city hall. They threw a small reception at an upscale restaurant. I helped pay for part of the party. After the wedding, Tiffany started working with him. She handled the administrative side, dealt with vendors, resolved HR issues. Jason said she had a natural talent for business, and that's when things started to change. At first, it was subtle. She would change the subject when I asked how the store was doing. Jason stopped telling me his plans. When I offered to help, he told me everything was under control, that I shouldn't worry. I thought it was all in my head. I thought he was just busy. But then came the day he asked me to move in with them. I was 60 years old. My knee was aching, my back complained after every effort. Cleaning houses was becoming an increasingly difficult task. Jason showed up at my small apartment and said, "Mom, come live with me. It's time for you to stop working." I resisted at first. I didn't want to be a burden on anyone. But he insisted so much that I finally accepted. I thought it would be good. I thought we would be closer, more united. I didn't know that was the beginning of the end. The first few months living with them, I tried to be useful. I did the dishes, the laundry, the cooking. Tiffany would say thank you, but with that tone one uses to thank the help. "Thanks, Ms. Grace. You can leave the folded towels over there." One day they hosted a dinner party for some important partners. I set the table, prepared everything with care. When the guests arrived, Tiffany called me into the kitchen and whispered, "Ms. Grace, it would be better if you had dinner in your room tonight. You'll be more comfortable up there." I went up the stairs with a plate in my hand and ate alone watching television. Jason said nothing. The following week, Tiffany started leaving lists stuck to the stainless steel fridge. Wash living room curtains. Organize the pantry. Clean the windows. I did everything. I thought I was helping since I was living under their roof for free. But one day I came down to get coffee and heard her talking on the phone with a friend. "Oh, it's great. My mother-in-law lives here, so I don't even need to pay for a maid anymore." She laughed. She hung up. She saw me standing in the kitchen doorway and didn't even flinch. The months passed. They started going on trips without telling me. I would wake up and find the house empty, with a short text from Jason on my phone. "Mom, we'll be back next week. There's food in the fridge." When my first grandson Tyler was born, I thought things would get better. I helped with everything. I changed diapers, got up at dawn, rocked him to sleep. Tiffany rested while I took care of the baby. But when Tyler turned 1, they threw a huge party. I helped organize every detail. I made the sweets, set up the decorations. When the party started, Tiffany asked me to stay in the kitchen. "Just to help with the service, okay?" I saw all the guests in the living room taking photos with Tyler. I stayed in the kitchen washing champagne flutes. There was a moment when I stepped out to see my grandson. Tiffany came right up behind me and told me they were about to cut the cake, that she needed me to check on the oven. There was nothing in the oven. I went back to the kitchen and stayed there until everyone had left. Jason said nothing. And then came the day of the box. I kept some things in the storage room of the house, old photos, Jason's baby clothes, some of Frank's personal items. Nothing of financial value, just memories. One day I went down and saw everything thrown in the trash. The box open, the photos soaked by the rain. I gathered what I could save and ran up to my room. I sat on the bed and cried for the first time since I had moved in there. I went to ask Jason about it. He was in his home office working on the computer. "Jason, did you see the box that was in storage?" He didn't even look up. "Oh, Mom, Tiffany ordered a cleanup. That stuff was taking up too much space. But your father's photos were in there. Your things from when you were little. We take pictures of everything with our phones now, Mom. No need to hoard old paper." And he kept typing. That night, lying in bed, I started to think. I started to remember everything I had given him. The land, the money for his wedding, the help at the store, the years I worked while sick so he wouldn't lack anything. And I started to remember that I had never asked for anything in return. Not a receipt, not an IOU. The next day, when they went out, I searched the drawers in the office. I didn't mess anything up, I just looked. I found company documents, contracts, bank statements. I took pictures of them with my phone. I saved everything in a folder in my email. I didn't know yet what I was going to do, but something inside me said, "Keep this." And I started keeping everything, every text message, every to-do list, everything they said, and I overheard by chance, because I felt that one day I would need it. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I discovered the truth. Jason was in the office talking on the phone with someone. The door was ajar. I was walking down the hallway carrying clean laundry, and I heard his voice. No, I started from scratch. I didn't have help from anyone. Everything I have today, I got through my own hard work. Self-made. I stopped dead in the hallway. I stood motionless, hugging the laundry basket. He continued talking. My mother? Ah, she was always a maid. A very simple life, you know. She never had anything to pass down to me, but I've always taken good care of her. He laughed. He hung up the phone. I walked up to my room slowly, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. Never had anything to pass down. The land that was worth $50,000 back then. The money that paid 3 months of rent for the first location. The bills I paid while he waited for the business to take off. Nothing. I waited for them to go out the next day and went down to the office again. This time I searched thoroughly. I opened the drawers, checked the binders, photographed everything that had the company letterhead, contracts, incorporation papers. I found the deed to the commercial properties, all in his name and Tiffany's, 50-50 partnership. I found the articles of organization for the LLC, founded 3 months after I sold the land, declared initial capital contribution, $10,000, $10,000. I sold the land for $50,000. I gave it all to him, and on paper, only 10 was declared. I kept searching. I found bank statements. I found spreadsheets. I even found an email from Tiffany to the CPA asking how to lower tax liability on asset declaration. I took pictures of everything. I saved everything in a separate folder. I created a new email account just for that and sent everything there. That night, sitting in my room, I grabbed an old notebook and started writing. How much I had given. When. How. $50,000 from the land. May 2007. $5,000 for the wedding party. November 2015. $2,400 in renovations for the first store. I remembered because I had to sell my gold wedding bands to get that cash, plus years of labor. Years cleaning, cooking, babysitting other people's kids while raising mine. I closed the notebook and hid it under the mattress. The following Sunday, they invited the CPA over for lunch. A man in his 50s, friendly, wearing a polo shirt. I served the table. I stayed in the kitchen while they chatted, but I left the door cracked open and listened to everything. The accountant was talking about expansion, about opening 2 more locations, about investments. And then he asked, "Jason, that initial contribution you made way back at the start, do you have the paper trail? Because if the IRS audits, it's good to have everything documented." Jason laughed out loud. Contribution? Man, I started with nothing. I took a bank loan, I worked like a dog, there was no contribution. Tiffany chimed in. It's true. We built this from zero. I think it's beautiful, don't you? No inheritance, no family help, just us. The accountant nodded. They changed the subject. I gripped the edge of the sink with both hands and breathed deeply. No family help. At that moment, I understood that it wasn't just forgetfulness. It wasn't just ingratitude. It was a total erasure. They had erased everything I did. To them, I had never existed in that success story. And worse, they had constructed a new narrative, a narrative where they were the heroes, where they had won all by themselves. And I was just the mother living there on charity. I went up to my room, picked up the notebook again, and started calculating. $50,000 in 2007 with inflation and interest. How much would that be today? I searched online. I used an inflation calculator, $145,000. I added the rest. The party, the renovations, the help with vendors, the month I paid the store's electric bill because he had no cash flow, $165,000. I wrote that number in the notebook. I underlined it 3 times, and for the first time, I didn't feel just pain. I felt rage. 2 weeks later, they threw a celebratory dinner. Jason had closed a huge contract with a developer. They invited 6 couples, industry people, business owners, a city councilman. I set the table, prepared the appetizers, made everything flawless. When the guests arrived, Tiffany came into the kitchen and said, "Ms. Grace, can you serve the table and then act as help for the rest of the night? You can eat in your room later, okay?" I nodded. I was already used to it. I served the appetizers. I served the main course. I heard them laughing in the living room, talking loudly, making toasts. When I went to serve dessert, one of the guests stopped me. "How long have you been working here?" I looked at her. Then I looked at Jason. "I don't work here. I'm his mother." The woman looked embarrassed. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought that—" Tiffany cut her off instantly. "My mother-in-law lives with us. She likes to make herself useful, right, Miss Grace?" I didn't answer. I went back to the kitchen, but something inside me broke at that instant. I finished the dishes. I went up to my room. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. I heard the guests leaving. I heard the car doors slamming. I heard the silence. Then I went down. Jason and Tiffany were in the living room, counting cash on the coffee table. It wasn't money from the dinner. It was company money, something they had received in cash. I stood in the doorway and spoke. "Jason, I need to talk to you." He didn't even lift his head. "Not now, Mom. I'm busy." "It's important." I said, "Not now." I took a deep breath. "I want to know when you're going to pay me back the money for the land." He stopped. He looked at me. "What money, Mom?" "The money I gave you to open the store. $50,000. I sold your father's land." Tiffany let out a short, dry laugh. "Ms. Grace, how long ago was that? 18 years? "Yes. And adjusted for inflation, it's over 160,000. Jason stood up from the chair. "Mom, that was a gift. Mothers give gifts to their children. Or do you think I have to pay you back for everything you did for me?" "It wasn't a gift. It was a loan. You said you would pay me back when the store turned a profit." He laughed, a dry, irritated laugh. "You're getting old. You don't remember things right." "I remember very well, Jason." Tiffany stood up too. "You know what, Ms. Grace? You live here for free. You eat for free. We pay for power, water, internet. You don't pay a dime. So I think the debt is more than settled, don't you?" I looked at her. Then I looked at my son. "Jason, are you really going to let her talk to me like that?" He crossed his arms. He remained silent. And then he spoke. "Mom, you don't live here anymore. Pack your things and go." I felt the floor disappear. At that moment, the housekeeper who was putting away the dinner things in the kitchen stopped. The driver who had come back to fetch something stood frozen in the hallway. Everyone heard. Tiffany sat back on the sofa and went back to scrolling on her phone, as if nothing had happened. Jason stood there, arms crossed, waiting for me to leave. I took a deep breath, gripped the strap of my purse. I looked at the frame on the console. Him and me at graduation, him at 8 years old, smiling. I said nothing else. I went upstairs, grabbed a suitcase, packed clothes, the notebook, my phone, and the box with the photos I had saved from the trash. I went down. I walked through the living room. They didn't even look at me. The housekeeper opened the door for me. She had tears in her eyes. I walked out, and the door closed behind me. I stayed for 3 days at a friend's house. Linda, whom I had known since the days we cleaned houses together. She took me in without asking questions. She made up the couch, brought a blanket, made tea. The first 2 days, I barely moved from the couch. I stared at the ceiling. I cried silently. I ate little. Linda would sit next to me every now and then and just stay there in silence, keeping me company. On the 3rd day, early in the morning, I woke up and saw the suitcase still closed in the corner of the room, the box with the photos on top of it. I got up, took a shower, got dressed. I opened the suitcase and took out the notebook that was hidden between the clothes. I sat at the kitchen table with a coffee and opened it to the page where I had noted everything down. 50,000 from the land, 5,000 from the party, 2,400 from renovations, plus the bills I had paid, plus the help that was never accounted for. I grabbed my phone and opened the photo gallery. Everything was there. Documents, statements, contracts, emails. I went to Linda's computer and asked for permission. She said yes. I created a new folder. I organized everything by date. I renamed the files. LLC Articles 2007. Bank Statement Initial Deposit. Asset Declaration 2015. I printed everything at a local office supply store. I spent a few dollars on printing. I went back to Linda's house with an envelope full of papers. I sat back at the table and started building a timeline. 2007. Land sale. $50,000 cash given to him. He deposited it in his bank. I searched my phone. I had a receipt I had photographed years ago when I borrowed the paper to check something. It was his bank statement. Deposit of $50K 2 days after the closing on the land. 2015. Help for the wedding, $5,000, bank transfer. I searched the history of my old bank account. I still had access. I downloaded the transaction record. 2008, work in the store, $20,400. For that, I didn't have a direct receipt, but I had a photo of me inside the store during the renovation, and I had the note in the old notebook I kept. I created a spreadsheet. I entered everything. I used the official CPI inflation calculator. Total updated, $165,420. I wrote that number on a separate sheet. Big letters, blue ink. I put everything inside a plastic folder. I put a rubber band around it. Linda saw me organizing all that and asked, "What are you going to do, Grace?" I looked at her. "I'm going to collect." "Collect how?" "The right way. With a lawyer." She stayed silent for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you know anyone?" I thought about it. I remembered Mr. Sterling. He had been the attorney for a neighbor of mine years ago. A serious man, older, who had always been very correct with me. He had helped handle Frank's probate when he died. I hadn't been in touch since, but I remembered where his office was. It was downtown, near the courthouse. "I know someone. I'm going to find him tomorrow." Linda nodded. "Then go, and go with your head held high." That night, before sleeping, I checked my phone and saw I had texts from Jason. 2 messages. "Mom, you overreacted, but when you calm down, we'll talk." And the second, "You know you can always count on me. But don't go inventing debts that don't exist." I read it. I didn't reply. I blocked the number. I lay on the couch, pulled up the blanket, and closed my eyes. But this time, I didn't cry, because something inside me had changed. I wasn't going to wait for anything from him anymore. I wasn't going to accept crumbs anymore. I wasn't going to lower my head anymore. I had proof, I had a witness, I had memory, and I was right. Tomorrow I would go looking for justice. The next morning, I woke up early, got ready, and went downtown. Mr. Sterling's office was in an old brick building near the court, 2nd floor, a discreet plaque on the door. Sterling and Associates, attorneys at law. I knocked. A secretary opened the door. "Good morning. I need to speak with Mr. Sterling. It's urgent." She looked at me, a bit suspicious. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but he knows me. My name is Grace. He handled my husband's estate many years ago." She asked me to wait. She went into an office and came back after a few minutes. "He will see you." I went in. Mr. Sterling was sitting behind a mahogany desk cluttered with files, white hair, reading glasses hanging around his neck. When he saw me, he stood up. "Ms. Grace? My goodness, how long has it been?" "A long time, Mr. Sterling." He pointed to the chair. I sat down. I put the folder on the desk. "What happened?" I took a deep breath, and I told him everything. The land, the money, the humiliation, the eviction, the lies they told. He listened in silence. He didn't interrupt me once. When I finished, I opened the folder and showed him the documents. He took them one by one. He read slowly. He was taking notes on a yellow legal pad. After about 15 minutes, he took off his glasses and looked at me. "Ms. Grace, do you have any more documents on his company? Tax returns, for example." "I have everything. I photographed everything I found in the office." I showed him the photos on my phone. He asked me to email them to him. I sent them right then. He opened his computer. He opened file after file. With every document, his expression changed. "Ms. Grace, do you know what I'm seeing here?" "No." "Your son declared an initial capital contribution of $10,000 at the incorporation, but you gave him $50,000. Where is the rest?" "I don't know." "And here, look at this." He turned the monitor towards me. 2016 tax return. He declared assets, but he didn't declare any debt. Not to you, not to the bank. And is that a problem? Depends on how we look at it. If you prove that was a loan and not a gift, he filed a false return. Because he didn't declare the liability. That's tax fraud. He kept checking. He opened another spreadsheet. And there's more. Look at the ownership here. 50% for him, 50% for his wife. But she only became a member of the LLC in 2016, 7 years after the founding. How does she own half? I didn't know what to answer. Mr. Sterling leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "Ms. Grace, what do you want?" "I want my money back." "Is that all?" I thought about it. "I want him to admit what he did, to stop lying." He nodded. "Then we'll do this. We'll attack on 3 fronts. He took a sheet of paper and started writing. "First front, legal. I'll file a civil suit for breach of contract and unjust enrichment. I'll ask for the principal plus interest. I have enough documents to prove it, and if he contests, we demand discovery of his bank records. Then everything comes out. Will he agree to pay? I don't know, but he'll have to answer in court, and that alone will hurt. He wrote down one more thing. Second front. Social. We're not going to sue in secret. I'm going to send a demand letter, certified mail, and I'll send a copy to his business address, to his CPA, to his partners, if he has any. Why? Because people like that are terrified of a stain on their reputation. Business owners hate lawsuits. They scare away clients. They scare away vendors. He continued. Third front, emotional. This is the most important one. We're going to confront him in person, but not at his house, in a place where he doesn't expect it, in a place where he doesn't have control. Where? Mr. Sterling thought for a moment. The bank. I'll request a meeting with his branch manager. I'll say it concerns a serious compliance issue regarding his business accounts. He'll show up thinking it's a vendor issue or an audit, and when he walks into that room, you'll be there. I felt a tightness in my chest, but it wasn't fear. It was something else. And what do I say? Nothing. I speak. You just sit there, head held high, with the documents in your hand. Let him see that you are not alone, that you will not look down anymore. He looked at me firmly. Ms. Grace, do you have the courage? I looked at him. I thought of everything I had been through. I thought of the humiliations. I thought of the door slamming in my face. I do. Then let's begin. I'll draft the demand letter today. Next week we set up the meeting at the bank. He extended his hand. I shook it. How much do you charge, Mr. Sterling? You pay me when we collect. 10% of what we recover. If we recover nothing, you owe me nothing. I felt like crying, but I held it back. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. You don't need to thank me. You are right. And we don't let the truth die. I walked out of the office with the folder under my arm. This time, I wasn't alone anymore. The demand letter went out on Tuesday. Mr. Sterling called me late in the afternoon. Ms. Grace, it's been delivered. He signed for it, and the copy arrived at the business too. I didn't answer right away. I just gripped the phone tighter. The meeting at the bank is set for Friday, 10 in the morning. I spoke to the manager. I told him it was a delicate financial matter involving his client's liability exposure. He accepted. Does Jason know? Not yet. I sent an email to his accounting firm saying there was a banking compliance flag and it would be good for him to appear. I didn't give details. He'll think it's vendors, overdraft, some administrative problem. And if he doesn't show up, he'll show up. A business owner doesn't ignore a summons from his bank. I hung up the phone and sat in Linda's kitchen. She was next to me peeling potatoes. Friday then, she said. Yeah. Are you scared? I thought about it. No, it's not fear. Then what is it? I don't know. It's something different. It's like I've been waiting for this day for a long time. Linda stopped peeling and looked at me. Then it's time. Thursday night, I laid out the clothes I was going to wear. Nothing flashy. Black slacks, white blouse, sensible flats. The same kind of clothes I wore when I went to work. I washed my hair. I ironed the clothes. I got everything ready. At dawn, I woke up before the alarm. 5:30 in the morning. I lay there staring at the ceiling. I thought about everything. About little Jason. About Frank. About the land. About the houses I cleaned. About the humiliations. I thought about the door closing behind me. And I thought about the door that was going to open today. I got up, took a shower, got ready slowly. Linda made coffee. She sat next to me. Eat something. I ate a piece of toast, drank the coffee. I wasn't hungry, but I knew I needed it. I grabbed the folder with the documents. I checked everything again, every paper in its place. I looked in the mirror before leaving. I wasn't beautiful. I wasn't fancy like Tiffany, but I was whole. I left the house at 8:30. I took the bus, got off downtown. I still had half an hour. I walked slowly to the bank branch. The street was busy, people walking in and out of shops, cars passing, the bright sun hitting the sidewalk. I stopped in front of the bank, took a deep breath. Mr. Sterling arrived 5 minutes later, gray suit, leather briefcase in hand. Ms. Grace, ready? Ready. Remember what I told you. You don't need to say anything, just sit there. Let me drive. But if you want to speak, speak. You have that right. I know. We went in. The security guard nodded. The receptionist pointed to the second floor. We walked up the stairs. The manager was waiting in a small, glass-walled conference room. Glass table, 4 chairs, air conditioning humming. Mr. Sterling, you must be Ms. Grace. I shook his hand. I sat down. I put the folder on the table, in front of me. The manager offered coffee. I said no. Mr. Sterling looked at his watch. 10:03. He should be arriving any minute. We sat in silence. I looked out the glass door. I watched the movement outside, people passing by, tellers calling out numbers. And then I saw him. Jason walking in through the main doors of the bank. Tailored blue button-down, dress slacks, hair styled to the side, phone in hand. He spoke to the receptionist. She pointed to the stairs. He came up. My heart raced, but I didn't look away. He came down the hallway. He looked around, looking for the room. And when he looked inside and saw me sitting there, next to Mr. Sterling, with the folder in front of me, he froze. He stopped in the middle of the hallway. He stood still, staring. Mr. Sterling stood up and opened the door. "Jason, come in. We were expecting you." Jason walked in slowly. He looked at me, then at Mr. Sterling, then at the manager. What is going on here?" Mr. Sterling closed the door. "Sit down, Jason. We need to resolve a liability." "What liability?" "I don't have any liability with the bank." "It's not with the bank. It's with your mother." He looked at me again, this time with anger. "Mom, don't you ever get tired? I already told you that." Mr. Sterling raised his hand. "Jason, sit down. Either we resolve this here, in a civilized manner, or we resolve it in civil court. You choose." Jason hesitated. He pulled out the chair and sat, tense, on the edge of the seat. The manager, who had remained quiet until then, pulled out a notepad. "I am here only as a witness. Mr. Sterling requested the bank's presence because this involves financial movements of a client. You may begin." Mr. Sterling opened his briefcase. He took out a document and placed it on the table. "Jason, do you remember May of 2007? How am I supposed to remember a date from almost 20 years ago? Then let me help you remember. Your mother sold a piece of land. She received $50,000, and she transferred it all to you." Jason laughed, a nervous, forced laugh. "That was a gift. Mothers help their sons." "A gift?" Mr. Sterling slid another paper toward him. "Then why did you deposit the amount the next day? Why did you incorporate your business 3 months later? Why did you declare an initial capital contribution of $10,000 if you received 50? Jason turned red. "I don't have to explain any of that." "Yes, you do. Because your mother has the receipt of the land sale. She has the statement from your bank from that time, which she photographed. And she has a witness that you promised to pay it back when the company turned a profit." "Witness? What witness?" I spoke, for the first time since he entered. "Me, Jason. I am the witness. I remember what you said. You said, 'Mom, when the store takes off, I'll pay you back. You'll have a house better than this one.' You said that in the kitchen, 2 days before I signed the deed." He looked at me. He opened his mouth to speak. He closed it. Mr. Sterling continued, "And it's not just that. Ms. Grace also helped with $5,000 for the wedding party. There is a transfer receipt. She helped with $2,400 in renovations for the first store. She paid the utility bills for the company for 3 months in 2008 while you were waiting for customers." Jason leaned back in the chair, crossed his arms. "So what? Moms help out. That's how it works. Not when the mother is left with nothing. Not when the mother loses the only asset she owned. Not when the son becomes a millionaire and kicks his mother out of the house." The manager raised his head, surprised. Jason looked away. "I didn't kick anyone out. She left because she wanted to." I felt the rage rising, but I took a deep breath. Mr. Sterling pulled out one more paper. "Jason, you declared a net worth of $3.4 million on last year's tax return. 5 stores, 2 properties, an imported car, but you didn't declare any debt. Where is the debt to your mother?" "There is no debt." "There is, and it's adjusted for inflation and interest. $165,420. Jason laughed, but it was a joyless laugh. "You guys are crazy. I'm not paying that." Mr. Sterling closed the folder and stared him down. "Then we file the lawsuit. Breach of contract, unjust enrichment, plus emotional distress, and I petition for full discovery of bank and tax records. Then the IRS will see everything. They'll see you received $50,000 and declared 10. They'll want to know where the rest went. And if they find out it was evasion, you don't just pay your mother. You pay fines. You face an audit. You face criminal charges. And you lose your reputation." Jason went pale. The manager wrote something down. He didn't say anything, but his expression changed. Mr. Sterling continued, "And there's more. Your wife entered the partnership in 2016 with 50% ownership, but the company was founded in 2007 with your mother's money. Where is her buy-in? Did she invest? Did she have the right? Or was it just a way to hide assets?" Jason swallowed hard. I'm going to talk to my attorney." "Go ahead. But in the meantime, the demand letter has been served. You have 15 days to respond. If you don't respond, we file. And then it becomes public record. Your clients will know. Your vendors will know. The whole world will know you built an empire on your mother's back and then threw her on the street." Jason looked at me. There was anger in his eyes, but there was something else too. There was fear. "Mom, are you really going to do this to me?" I gripped the edge of the table. I looked him in the eye. "Jason, I spent 23 years scrubbing other people's floors so you wouldn't starve. I sold the only asset I had so you could open your store. I ended up with a crooked back, aching knees, cracked hands from scrubbing so much. And when you got rich, you treated me like a servant. You humiliated me in front of strangers. You threw my things in the trash. And you put me out of the house like I was nothing." My voice shook, but I didn't stop. "You don't just owe me money, Jason. You owe me respect. You owe me dignity. And you owe me the truth. The truth that you didn't build anything alone. The truth that I was there. And you erased that. You lied to everyone. You said you started from scratch. You said you never had help." Jason looked away. "But I didn't erase anything, Jason. I am here, with proof, with a witness, and with a lawyer." Mr. Sterling put his hand on the table. "Jason, we can resolve this right now. You recognize the debt, we sign an agreement, you pay in installments, and it's over. Nobody needs to know, or you deny it, and we go to court, and then everyone will know." Jason stayed silent. He looked at the floor. He took a deep breath. How much time do I have to pay?" "Depends. Ms. Grace, how much time do you accept?" I thought about it. It wasn't about the money. It never was. I want it all in 6 months, and I want it in writing, recognizing that it was a loan, that I helped, and that he owes. Jason clenched his fists. 6 months? I don't have that much liquid cash. You have $3 million in assets. Sell a car, take out a loan, do what you want, but pay. Mr. Sterling pulled another paper from his briefcase. "I already brought the settlement agreement and promissory note. You just need to sign." Jason took the paper. He read it. His hand was trembling. He looked at me one last time. "You really want to destroy me, is that it?" I stood up, grabbed my purse, looked him in the eye. "Jason, I don't want to destroy you. I just want you to remember that I exist." And I walked out of the room. I didn't wait for him to sign. I didn't wait for an answer. Mr. Sterling stayed behind to handle the details. I walked down the stairs slowly. I passed through the bank doors, stepped out onto the street. The sun was bright. The street was full of people, noise of honking, of conversations, of life. And for the first time in months, I took a deep breath, and I felt peace. Jason signed the agreement that same day. Mr. Sterling called me an hour later. "Ms. Grace, it's done. 6 installments, promissory note notarized. The first installment is due next week." I didn't celebrate. I just said thank you. The first payment hit my account on the exact day, $27,000. I used part of it to pay Mr. Sterling. The rest I saved. The second payment was 3 days late. Mr. Sterling called their office. The next day, the money was there. With the money from the first 2 payments, I rented a small apartment, 2 bedrooms, living room, kitchen. In a quiet neighborhood, close to the grocery store and the pharmacy. I bought a bed, a sofa, a table. Nothing expensive, but all mine. Linda helped me move in. We painted the kitchen a pale yellow, put curtains in the living room. When I finished organizing everything, I sat on the new sofa and looked around. It was small, it was simple, but it was home. 2 weeks later, I got a text from Jason. "Mom, we need to talk." I didn't reply right away. I waited a day. Then I sent, "Speak. In person. Can I come over?" I met him at a coffee shop near my place. I wasn't going to let him into my space. He arrived at the scheduled time. He looked thinner. He had deep circles under his eyes. His clothes were rumpled. He sat across from me and stayed silent for a few seconds. Mom, I wanted to apologize. I said nothing. I know I messed up. I know I treated you badly. Tiffany, too. She went overboard. But we were under pressure. The company growing. A lot happening at once. Jason, pressure doesn't justify humiliation. He lowered his head. I know. He stayed quiet again, toyed with his coffee cup. Tiffany left. I looked at him. When she saw the agreement, when she saw the amount, she flipped out. She said I was weak, that I had let myself be manipulated. She screamed at me in front of Tyler. She made a scene, and she left. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel anything. She took half the company shares. She's filing for divorce. She wants a division of assets. He looked at me, waiting for some reaction. Jason, I have nothing to do with that. I know, Mom. I just wanted you to know. And I wanted to ask if we could try again. Start over. Me, you, and Tyler. I took a deep breath. Jason, I am not coming back to your house. I am not going to be your maid. I am not going to raise your son while you work. I already did that. I already gave everything. And you threw it away. I'm not asking for that, Mom. I'm just asking for a chance. Then pay what you owe, respect my boundaries, and admit in front of everyone what I did for you. No lies, no hiding, no inventing that you started from scratch. He stayed quiet. Then he nodded. I'll do that. And another thing. If you want me to see Tyler, you ask beforehand. You ask if I can. You don't show up here by surprise thinking I have an obligation. Okay. And if you're late on a payment again, I call the lawyer. No warning, no second chances. He swallowed hard. Understood. I finished my coffee. I stood up. Jason, I don't know if we'll manage to rebuild anything, but if we're going to try, it's on my terms. With respect, with the truth. No burdens on my back. He stood up too. I'll try, Mom. I didn't hug him. I didn't hold his hand. I just nodded and walked away. 3 months later, all the payments had been made. I had $165,000 in my account. I didn't spend it all. I saved most of it. I used a little to upgrade the furniture, to get treatment for my knee, to take a trip to the coast with Linda. Jason stopped by every now and then. He brought Tyler. Stayed an hour, 2. We talked little, but he didn't disrespect me anymore. One day he asked me, Mom, do you forgive me? I thought before answering. Jason, forgiving isn't forgetting. Forgiving isn't pretending nothing happened. I don't know if I've forgiven you completely, but I'm not trapped in it anymore. I don't replay it in my head. I don't wake up at night thinking about it. So maybe that's a form of forgiveness. He accepted that, and life went on. Today I am 63 years old. I live alone. I have my money. I have my peace. I didn't go back to cleaning houses. I knit. I sell to a few local shops. It's not much, but it helps. I have friends. I have a routine. I have dignity. And I learned one thing. We don't need to accept humiliation just because it comes from those we love. We don't need to lower our heads just because we are mothers, just because we are old, just because we depended on someone once. We have the right to collect, to demand respect, to say no, and if necessary, we have the right to go looking for justice, because no one is invisible, no one is disposable, and every mother, every father, every person who gave their life for someone else deserves, at the very least, to be remembered. If this story touched you, comment below which city you're listening from, and stay with me for the next videos that will appear on your screen. Someone might need to hear this today.